going to show you how to letter on photos. And this is really simple. And I'm not even going to do steps really because it's a two-step process. You're going to pick a photo and then you are going to letter on it. And we'll do some added things like we did in last week's lesson, like adding the little star stamps or adding a shadow. And I'll show you with these brushes that have some opacity how to get lines out and how to brighten them up if you want to. It's really easy. So I'll show you both of these individually. Let's start with the Let Your Heart Be Your Compass one first. So the first thing you're going to do on your iPad is go to unsplash.com. So unsplash.com has lots of beautiful free images you can use. So we're just going to type in galaxy and see what comes up. So I went through and I downloaded a bunch of my favorites. So you can see I picked that one. That's the one that is right here. And I used that one. So if you keep scrolling through, you can pick whichever ones appeal to you. So if you save it, you just want to save it to your photos and then we'll bring it into Procreate. So you can just download it. You can credit, which I like to do if I'm using it in a blog post or social media, but you are not required to. So you can just download it and then it will pop up in your photos. So now, again, we're gonna start with this one. So we're gonna open Procreate and click the plus sign, and I'm just gonna do a screen size canvas. And I want it to be this orientation. And then I'm gonna come up to my little wrench tool and click insert a photo. Go to my photos, you can see that one right there. So just tap that, and I need to resize it a bit. So I think I did something kind of like that in my piece. And so we'll rename that layer photo. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our text. So I had my text sketched out with pencil and paper. I brought it in and I'm just gonna trace it. So I'm gonna skip showing you that part and just bring the lettering in and show you how oops, so that's the wrong lettering. That's for the other piece we're doing. So let me go grab that lettering. So, and if you do your lettering on a separate canvas, I kind of like to sketch on paper still, but if you did it on another artboard, all you have to do to grab that, you go over to that piece, and then you can tap your layer and click copy. So that's the layer with my lettering. And then you can go to your new artboard and just click the wrench tool and click paste. So now I have my lettering. So I'm gonna go ahead and trace that for you to show you two tips. So I'm gonna reduce the opacity and add a new layer so I can recreate that lettering. And I'm going to use for this one the Celestial script, and we wanna make sure it is in white. So I have it set to about 11% right now. So then I'm just gonna use pressure to control my strokes. So light pressure for upstrokes, heavy pressure for downstrokes. And I'm going to create the calligraphy. Okay, so now I'm gonna just go ahead and delete out my base layer. So you can see it's not super bright because it is a brush with some opacity. And you can see there's some overlap here because of that as well. So if that bothers you, all you have to do, I come over here to the little hand tool, and I use the same, you can choose any brush for that just like you can with brushes and erasers. So I just grab that, and then all you have to do is zoom in and carefully just kind of blend it out. So I go through the piece and do that anywhere that it kind of stands out. Sometimes it won't. If you have a crossbar, it'll stand out a little, so you can just blend that out gently, or you can leave it, whatever you prefer. And if you want to brighten it up, all you have to do, swipe left and duplicate the layer, and you can see it automatically brightens it up. And maybe that might be too bright, so you could adjust the opacity to make it just like you want it. So I'm gonna put it about there, that's 65%, and then I'm gonna merge that layer down. So tap the layer and click merge down. So now I have my lettering. So now it looks good, but I really want it to stand out a little more. So you can see in this piece, I just added a simple shadow to kind of make it pop against that night sky. So we did that in the last video, but let's go through it again. So, and to keep organized, we'll rename this our calligraphy layer, and we are going to, on that layer, swipe left and duplicate it, tap the bottom layer, rename that shadow, and what we want to do is then come over to our motion blur layer, and we're gonna drag it, start here and just, whoops. Am I on my layer still? Yep. So motion blur, drag it. I'm gonna go for about 24%. So then I hit the selection tool and change my color to a dark color. And now I'm gonna tap the layer, click select, fill layer, and repeat that a few times, select, fill layer, until it is dark as you want it to be. Now sometimes I leave it a little, like if I kept going it would get even more solid, but I want it to be a little bit see-through. So then I'll adjust it and slide it into place. And then I can play with the opacity again by tapping that in. So I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm gonna go to around, let's say 59%. And then you have this beautiful piece that you've lettered on a photo. So that's the end of that video, and I'll be back in 1 second and walk you through the other one. All right, so let's create this one. And this one we're gonna make in a square so it looks nice on Instagram. So I am going to click the plus sign and opt for a square. And then I am going to click the wrench, insert a photo. From my photos, I'm going to grab this one. That's the one I used. I'm going to adjust it to size. Now that little streak in the sky, I think is supposed to be a shooting star. I felt like it looked fake, so I actually photoshopped that out and then brought the photo in for my final photo, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna adjust that into place how I want it, and then we're gonna add the lettering. So again, if you've done your lettering on another artboard as a draft, you can grab that and bring it right over so you can trace it as a final version. I have mine here. Nope, not that one. Right here. So you can see I did that piece and it originally had that in it, and then again I brought that into Photoshop to kind of edit that out. So I'm going to, my stars were on a separate layer, so I'm gonna actually merge that down so I can grab all that, and I'm going to tap the layer and click copy, and then go back out to my main artboard that I just started, and I'm gonna paste that so I can trace my own calligraphy. So that layer I'm gonna rename as, actually, I usually name that as my sketch layer. So I'm going to click the plus sign and add a new layer and rename that. That'll be my main lettering layer. This time we're gonna be using a monoline brush. So I'm gonna grab the Celestial monoline, and again, make sure I've got a light color. I'm gonna pick the white. Let me see how that sizing is. Way too small. So I'm gonna mess with the size. That's about 8%. I wanna go a little smaller, a 7. And again, I like to do my lettering on paper and sketch it. And then I just like we did inserting this photo, I insert a picture of my sketch and then just trace my sketch to add the lettering. It's easier to edit it on Procreate, but I feel like using a pencil and paper gives me a little more control. And now sometimes with a piece like this, I will actually do each piece of lettering on a separate layer so that if I want to move it up or down or adjust it just a little, it's a little easier to do that and I have more flexibility. And then I can merge it down into one layer later. All right, so I'll finish this up and then we'll talk again about the opacity factor and how you can play with that. All right, so our lettering is complete. Whoops, didn't mean to delete that out. And now I can turn off or delete my sketch layer. So again, if we zoom in, you can see there's some overlap because this brush has some opacity to it. So again, just come over to the tool that allows you to smooth it out. And again, I'm gonna choose the same brush, the Celestial Monoline, and then I'll just zoom in and kind of gently blend those out. And sometimes you might find other brushes work better for that. Am I? Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. That's why it's not blending. So you see how, let me pause for 1 second. I forgot to do the other layers on more than one layer. So when I originally did this, I did each line on its own layer. That way I could kind of shift and adjust it super easily. The other way you can do that if it's all on one layer, so let me merge this down. So it's all on one layer. And let's say I want to shift stars just a little. I can grab this little selection tool and carefully outline it. And then I can kind of move it around and adjust it so it's just like I want it. Okay, so now that we're on the right layer, we can zoom in and blend out that overlap. See how easy that is? You can just take it right out of there. And I can see I went over a little bit on this, so I'm actually gonna erase that out. So I go through the whole piece and do that. It just takes a second to kind of blend those out. And then again, if you want to have a brighter look, you can swipe left, duplicate that layer, and now it's super bright and I don't want it quite that bright. So on the top layer, I'll tap the N and bring the opacity down to about 66 and then tap it and click merge down. So now I have my final lettering layer. And for this one, I decided it didn't really need a shadow, but I wanted to add some stars. So I grabbed the just the main #1 star stamp, and I like to do everything on separate layers so it's easy to move them around. So I'll name this layer stars, and I just kind of at random placed a few big stars. Let's see, there. This kind of helps balance out your piece and fill in any areas that maybe the lettering isn't quite precisely the same. So it's an easy way to really create balance in your piece and symmetry by adding little details, and that's something I do a lot in my work. So you just kind of go through and add those at random until you're happy with it, and then you easily have another really beautiful piece.